nonstop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
Just confidence in me. I know what I'm capable of. Had some kicks in there in that game that I was happy with, but I balance it by having that confidence in me, knowing my work ethic, knowing I'm going to put my best foot forward, and just having a short memory and moving on.
I like the hat there from Greg Joseph. Kindness, pass it on. He's telling all of you beat writers like Judd Zulgad, just go easy on me, okay?
Here's my hat. Make your damn field goals. Pass it on or go home.
Do your job.
Exactly
Print the
right.
shirts.
Exactly right. I screwed up should be the hat.
Oh, my God. All right, this is Daily Vikings Entertainment. Purple Daily presented by Surly Brewing Company. Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, our executive producer, Declan Goff. If you're watching us on the Purple Daily YouTube channel, A, thank you for getting us over 17,000 subscribers yesterday. And B, if you're watching on a TCL TV, you're helping the show and supporting a sponsor because TCL is the world's best-selling electronic consumer brand. Has a new lineup of award-winning TVs delivering the most entertainment with stunning resolution, all at an affordable cost. TCL, enjoy more of the things you love with TCL. Boys, every week, usually on Thursdays, we give you, and you guys compete head-to-head ferociously, our random Viking of the week.
Well, it's been one-sided ferociously, but yes, we do ferociously compete against one another.
Mostly Declan getting his ass kicked.
I don't like to brag.
But you have a 7-game winning streak.
I'm very
Declan,
low-key.
right?
Yep, it's 7.
So I'm going to let you guys, I've given you some hints here. I'm going to give you 5 clues, and then I'll let you guys just sort of shout out the answer to this week's Random Viking of the Week. Mm-hmm. All right, you guys ready?
Yep.
This Random Viking of the Week hails from Lakewood, Ohio.
What city is that?
This Random Viking of the Week started 86 games in his NFL career. Interior offensive line, meat and potatoes.
Well, you're giving us big clues.
I know.
Whoa.
Well, it's a big man because this Random Viking of the Week stands 6'7" tall and weighed over 300 pounds in his NFL career. This Random Viking of the Week started a Super Bowl. Obviously not for the Vikings, but he played in the Super Bowl.
Bryant McKinney?
He's a guard.
Oh, he's a guard.
Is that your final answer?
You can ding me.
It is not Bryant McKinney. But this Random Viking of the Week, let's bring him in, is back on Score North and Purple Daily. He is the Rhino, Alex Boone.
Yo, what's up, guys?
What's going on?
What is happening, Alex? What is happening with your goatee, your hair? It looks like you've added 6 new tattoos since the last time we brought you on the show.
No. Nothing's new about me. Still the same old Booney, the Rhino, here to hang out with you guys. I'm super excited. Judd, I can't wait to mess with you. Declan, I missed you so much.
Wow.
You wanted to say something else, I think.
Football.
So we've got Alex is in the mix as a weekly contributor here on Purple Daily. By the way, the Marconi finalist, Purple Daily, which we'll find out in October if we actually rise to the level of getting the hardware. Maybe Alex can be the final piece that puts us over the top to be a world-renowned podcast here on Purple Daily. But, dude, welcome back to the show. We're super pumped to have you. Declan found a photo of the first time we all met, a magical moment at, I think it was Bradley's or some bar in Boomtown. You had your full practice gear on. You came over on the old radio show, 1500 ESPN, and
Yes.
We're pumped to have you back, man.
Dude, so happy to be here. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait.
Absolutely.
So you have, let's just get into it. I think the last time we had you on Purple Daily or Mackie and Judd was back like a year and a half ago. You went on a journey to get back into the NFL, and as coincidence would have it, Vikings are playing the Seahawks this weekend. You got signed by the Seahawks at the end of last season, and so you've been inner workings of Mike Zimmer locker rooms, inner workings of Pete Carroll locker rooms. I guess before we get into like the actual matchup and football things, what has your last year and a half been like? And what was it like when you finally got a call that said, "Hey, all this work that you've put in to gain a bunch of weight and to get back in the NFL, that boom, like your comeback was complete."
Dude, it was insane, especially because, the whole COVID thing had happened, and then after that, it was kind of like you couldn't do anything with free agents, and nobody really knew what was going on. But even more so, like as the season went on, like everybody that they brought in had to be super strategic, and it was how are we bringing them in? Or they have to sit and wait for 5 days. So I ended up getting a call from Baltimore first, and went out there, and I got to talk to John and stuff, and they was going to sign there, and then all of a sudden, Pete called, and he's like, listen, dude, come on out here. You belong on the West Coast. You know this division. Like, we're going into a tough stretch. We're about to win the West, but, it'd be great. And I was like, dude, you got to go play with Pete Carroll anytime you get a chance. Just because every time I always played against him and being on the field with him, I hated him, but I loved him because he was always so energetic, right? Like he's that coach. And I remember if there was ever a coach I used to talk a ton of smack to, it was always him. And he would just laugh at me. He'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever, Boone. And like he would just kind of laugh and chew his gum, and it would drive me nuts because he just laughed me off all the time. But when I got there, I was like, everything finally makes sense. I get now why they are the way they are. I get now why when they're in the fourth quarter, they're like, hey, we could be down 4 touchdowns. We're still good. Like everything about them is always the same thing. They're always positive. They're always, hey, we can win this. We can do this. We have Russell. We have Bobby. We have, whoever it is, they're going to make a big play for us. Chris Carson, like they just feed positivity. And when you're on a team like that, you're like, dude, I can do no wrong. And that's when people end up playing really well and doing better than they should.
So what's Pete like too, as far as that goes compared to the other coaches, Alex, that you played for? Zimmer, Harbaugh, right, in San Francisco.
Yep.
What's he like as far as because I mean his mentality seems a little bit more of like a college one in being positive, rah to a certain degree. What's that like when you're coming from playing for a guy like Mike who clearly lets things get to him a little bit more?
Well, I think that number one with Pete, I mean, it was such a short amount of time with him, but you could see that nothing ever fazed him, ever. And he was always like, every day in practice there had to be a competition somewhere. I mean, you showed up and it was like the most insane time of your life because this team room was just so electric and there was music blaring all day and people were, having fun, and Pete's out here trying to make everybody feel good because he knows it's late in the season. And he's like, hey, exactly. Like all of a sudden you come in and he's like, he's got this picture of me from high school and he's like, hey, listen, it's going to be Boone versus Monet today. Who's going to win? And Brian Monet's like a 360-pound nose tackle. And I'm like, are we wearing pads today? They're like, nah, dude, can't wait to see it. I'm like, hey, let's go. Like, haven't played in 2 years. Show up first day. They're like, hey, you're on the ringer, dude. You're either in or you're out. And when you get there, they accept you right away. And being with Russ was awesome because he was one of the most positive people ever. And then not only that, but he was always like, hey, listen, we got to get better. We can be more. We can do more. We can do this. Let's believe in each other. And you're like, this dude really is like this all the time, which to me is just so fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look at Russell Wilson from the outside like, is he fake? What is his?
No.
He's got this sort of this weird, happy, euphoric personality. So you're saying that's who he is?
Dude, he's always excitable. Like everything about him, like I just stood by him and I was like, I feel like a better person. Like I was talking to the coaches, I was like, do you guys feel the same thing? And I mean, me and the coaches, we're all like-minded. They're like, dude, I feel it too. Yes, I feel like a better person being around him because he's just laughing and he's happy and he's like, yeah, dude, you got this. Don't worry about it. He's like, I mean, like the first time I saw him, I was like, oh my God, there he is. Like I got really excited and I started to get beat red because I'm like, you get starstruck when you meet awesome people. And I'm like, it's Russ Wilson. Like I'm not an enemy anymore. I'm a friend. So I, Booney, what's up? The legend. I'm like, oh my God, this guy. He's like, dude, 2 years out and you're coming back. You're crazy. I'm like, oh my God, he knows me. I was like, dude, he's like, bro, so happy to have you here. Can't wait to get to know you. Like everything about him, you're just like, that made me feel really good. Like I don't feel nervous anymore. I feel really excited to be around him. He's like, come on, let's go. And everything about him, dude, he can throw this ball. I swear to God, it's the sweetest, prettiest damn ball I ever saw in my life. And he does it routinely. Like he's not even trying to throw the ball and it'll just drop right in the corner of the end zone. And the coach is like, every time something good happens, everybody goes nuts. And it's constantly like a rah-rah, we feed off each other session. And dude, you feel like you're just hanging with the boys all day. It is so fun.
So let's talk about that and quarterbacks because Phil and I have had this discussion quite a bit, but you can articulate it perfectly because you've been around them on the field and in the locker room.
Are you about to be critical of Kirk Cousins right now? Because I do not stand for that on this program.
I'm not going to be critical of Kirk Cousins, but what I am going to ask you is this.
You're awfully negative.
No, I'm going to ask you a generic question about quarterbacks because Russ Wilson seems to fit the parameters of what I'm thinking. How important is it that a quarterback, and it's not an easy thing to do, but has the ability that you just talked about with Russ, which is he's not only a talented, gifted athlete, but he also has the ability to pull people together to make a guy like you who's played professional sports for a long time feel like a kid. I mean, those are not simple things to do, but how much of a benefit is that when that person has that entire package where you say to yourself, oh my God, this guy absolutely controls not only what goes on the field, but also in the locker room and things like that. So sort of Favre-like. I mean, they're not the same guy, but Favre had that too, where people seem to be in awe of Brett Favre.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's huge. I mean, you talk about when you're able to get guys that believe in a system, and really the system is around Russ. And not only that, but you said it. If you want to be that guy for this team, you have to go out and prove it. You can't just talk a whole bunch. You got to actually go out and you got to make the plays. You got to make the throws. You got to be able to run around and extend plays. And the things that he's done for this team and gotten them into the playoffs and taken them into the playoffs, and just the way he can, adapt on the run, and the guys see that. Like, I remember everybody there was like, dude, no matter what happens, Russ will get us out of this situation. Now, at the end of the year, that whole thing came out about Russ, and that was a little shocking to me because the way that everything ended, I mean, you really didn't realize that he was as upset as he was, but I understand what he's saying. He's like, listen, guys, I'm doing too much, and I'm taking too many hits, and at the end of the day, I want to play this game forever, and if I continue to take these hits, I'm not going to be able to play very long, and you can tell that he's extremely passionate. And that's another thing. When guys gravitate towards you, they want to gravitate towards somebody that's going to lift them up, that's going to bring them up. And when you're constantly the most positive person and you're in there every day at 5 a.m. and you always look sharp, like his shirts are looking good, his jersey's tucked in, like you're like, damn, this dude looks good all the time. Like, I'm not even kidding you.
That's what we say about Judd, too. He just raises the level of fashion and professionality on the show.
It's a man crush. You've got a man crush on Russell Wilson. Let's call it
it's a huge man crush. And I've never denied that because of the way he is. But then when you get to meet him and you sit in a room with him and he's like, hey, listen, when we run this, I need it to be like this, all right? They're like, yo, Russ, got you. I got you. You're like, yeah, this dude controls every room he walks in. And that's what's so powerful about this team is that they believe in Russ and Russ believes in them. And technically, they're not out until Russ says they're out. Like, they'll believe that they can continue to keep going until Russell's like, yeah, guys, that's it. The game's over. Like, that's what's so awesome about this. And then Pete and Russ are just, they're maniacs together, and they're constantly talking to each other and bouncing ideas off each other. And you're like,
interesting.
You're like, I'm listening to him, and I'm like, wow, this is like, man, these guys.
Wait.
I know where you're going. I teed you up. I teed him up.
What a Richard you are.
You like that? You like that? Can you confirm? Does Pete Carroll watch film with Russell Wilson?
I'm almost positive he does, just because of the way that Russ, I mean, dude, I can't explain to you a level of maturity.
I ask for no particular reason. I'm just
no reasons.
Generally curious,
Yeah, no, I'm sure they are.
So, okay, well, I just want to preface this by saying you've been in the Seattle locker room a lot more recently than you've been in the Vikings locker room, and so this might not. I'm going to ask a couple questions, and you take it wherever you want to, but. Mike Zimmer, I saw this stat come down from our friend of the show, Minnesota Researcher, and he does a lot of research on Minnesota sports teams, and he has it tallied. If you go Mike Zimmer's entire career as a head coach back to 2014, he has the second lowest winning percentage against teams that finished the season as winning teams. His teams are 17-39 since 2014. Against teams that finished the season with a winning record. Of course, coincidentally, the only coach worse is Jay Gruden. What's the common denominator that both of those guys have had for large chunks? It would be Kirk Cousins. I just feel like for the Vikings to dig out from this hole, it's going to take things from Mike Zimmer, whether it's a new style of interaction with his team and coaching, just more of an all-encompassing view on being a head coach, not just being hyper-focused on defense, and they're going to have to beat good teams, Alex. I guess my general question is, what are your thoughts on Mike Zimmer and the Vikings' ability to dig out from 0-2 after all the lavish things you just praised the Seahawks culture for?
I mean, listen, you got to remember this too. And, when you're talking about these teams, everybody's built differently and everybody has a different coach. And after a while, when you talk to enough people in this league, you start to see the writing on the wall. These coaches are who they are. They're never going to change. They're never going to do anything that you want them to do. They're going to do what they want to do. So everybody continues to keep asking, Zimmer to keep being this offensive-minded guy. You need to be more accepting of this. You need to do this. That's never going to happen. The team needs to figure that out and move on from there. And for me, they can easily climb out of this rut. I mean, you have some of the most superstar players on your team right now. The fact that people are like, can they climb out of this rut? If you don't, you all should be fired. I mean, think about this realistically. Let's think about every level of every position, right? Like, here we go. On defensive line, you got Danielle Hunter. Boom. One of the best in the game. Yeah. Linebackers, you got Eric Kendricks. Clearly one of my most favorite linebackers to ever walk on a field. But 2, he's still the best in the game. In the back end, you have Harry. I'm not even going to go into how much I love Harry. But then you still have Patrick Peterson on the outside. I mean, you're built everywhere on defense. On offense, you have everybody. Like, you need Irv Smith back, no question. But you still have Dalvin. And to me, that's the biggest thing. Like, you need to get him going. And in the first game, I watched it again. The run blocking was horrifically bad. It was just, he couldn't get past the line of scrimmage before somebody hits him. And as a running back, how am I supposed to read anything if I can't even get to the hole? Like, you have to get me somewhere to get there. Now you look at this last game, and it's like a completely different version of it, right? Like, this run blocking was so much better. If you can just get Dalvin through the hole, he will make guys bounce off him. And I'm not just saying 1 or 2. I'm saying like 4 or 5. This kid is still incredible when he runs. Clearly the top 3 running back in the NFL. But when they talk about getting out of a rut, all you got to do is go back to who you are. You're a run-first team. Just run the damn ball. It's not hard. Get in front of people. Like, at some point when I was playing, coaches were like, dude, run blocking ain't even that hard. Just get in front of them and let the running back make a move. That's what we pay them to do. Now, at times, yeah, you're going to have to bury your face into someone's soul, and we're going to ask you to do that a little bit. But you know what? If you turn around, that guy running behind you, right? They used to say this. If you would just turn around, that guy running behind you, he'll bury his face into your soul if you don't. Like, that's how this goes. And so going forward, you're like, dude, get back to the fundamentals and basics. Run the ball, play action. Everything else should just be like, we'll keep adding on as we go.
Mm-hmm. Actually, that's real quick, Judd. This is
Get those nerds! Nerds!
You brought up play action. This is a good time for our nerd football stat of the week here on Purple Daily. And it's presented in part by Judd's favorite coping mechanism, Surly Brewing Company.
Hold on a second, Booney. I got to show you something. I come with a visual today. Yes, that's right, a box of Surly Furious. Now, you're in great shape, and I don't know if you drink, but now that you're retired, you know what? Try a Surly Furious IPA. In fact, I want you to go crush a 6-pack or something, because I do every Sunday.
Responsibly.
Don't drive, but there's nothing wrong with drinking a 6-pack if you're not driving.
Have you ever buried your soul in an opposing player's body while bearing Surly 6-packs? That's the question here.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm sure in college I was, yes.
Yeah, you probably
Crack open a Surly Furious. Enjoy the IPA that revolutionized Minnesota craft beer. Don't settle, get surly, much like head coach Mike Zimmer used to before he became the new gentler Zim.
Also, real quick, shout out to the Minnesota Lottery. So they've got a $5 scratch game that can win you up to $100,000, a Skull game, $2 Skull game that can win you up to $15,000, and great second chance prizes like Vikings tickets and merchandise. Just say, I'm into Viking scratch games from the Minnesota Lottery. Must be 18 or older to play.
You like that? You like that?
So to Booney's point about play action, okay, so as much as we rag on Kirk Cousins on this show, he is excellent at play action. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the league when given protection, play action, suck defenders in, etc. All right, the stats bear that out. The Vikings ran 8 play actions on 42 pass attempts in week 1, which seemed odd. Last week, they connect on the second play of the game, a 64-yard play action touchdown pass to start the game. From that point forward, they ran only 8 play actions on 30-some pass attempts the rest of the game. So I guess, am I over? Are you not supposed to be able to run 15 or 20 play actions in a game before it loses its effectiveness? Or would you have the Vikings be running more play action, Booney?
I think the problem is this. You remember the first game, you're down, so you're now all of a sudden you got to crawl out of a hole, and so then coaches automatically get away from play action because they're like, what's it really going to sell? Like, but you forget what's standing behind you in the backfield. I mean, just 33 looking at 11 guys would scare all 11 guys at the same time. They don't – these guys, they get into these games and they try to be super cute and super fancy, and you're like, listen, man, keep it simple, okay? We can still run with this guy. Maybe we're just having a slow start. We can get going later. But when you have Dalvin Cook in the backfield and he had – what did he finish first game with, like 60 yards or something?
Yeah, 61 yards or something.
That's unacceptable. I blame that on the OC. Now, don't get me wrong. The offensive line gets a lot of credit, too, because that was just some bad blocking. But at the point is, hey, listen, I know we're not running the ball well. What gets us back to what we are? What gets Dalvin back to something comfortable? Do we keep him between the tackles more? Do we just run him straight ahead? Do we toss him the ball? Like, you always have to have an out. And I feel like coaches nowadays, when they start to get into these shootouts, they get nervous. And they're like, hey, let's just drop back and we'll do some passes and we'll do some things that maybe we're not as good at, but we can still do. Like, I like the fact that they're getting the ball out quickly. I mean, they have great receivers. You have to get them the ball as soon as you can. Let them make these plays. They run great routes. They're always wide open. Like, there's just – I mean, look at KJ Osborne. I mean, he was wide open. You know somebody got ripped open for that, but it's because they're looking at everybody else. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, and they still have that Dalvin in the back of their mind of what if they do hand it off. I mean, that's why this offense needs to start churning even more butter. These guys need to start showing up that aren't named Adam Thielen or Justin Jefferson or, Dalvin always has to be Dalvin because without his success, you're not going to win games. That's just the bottom line. You need him to start being more.
Oh, go ahead, Judd.
I do think that the loss of Irv Smith Jr. at tight end definitely hurt because he was being used in training camp a ton. And I'll tell you right now, Booney, he looked fantastic in training camp. I know
he did.
He looked great. And I think he was a Kirk go-to guy. And so I think the loss of Irv Smith definitely, as far as Clint Kubiak goes, and probably Kirk as well, threw things off a little bit from what was planned going into the season.
I agree. And I think that when you have a big physical tight end like that, you can do huge amount of things. And then all of a sudden you say, hey, listen, the middle of the field's going to be wide open because we're running everybody everywhere else. So now all of a sudden when you don't have that, you lose a huge piece of your offense. I mean, the tight ends in a play-action offense are huge because they're the ones that slip behind the linebackers. They're the ones that all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, is that guy running down the seam? What is that? I mean, I'll give you the best example, right? Check this out. Last night, the Packers, right? We all saw that game plan because Louis Riddick was telling everybody what the game plan was. Now, normally, they don't tell you what they're doing, but we'll hear about it on the sidelines. Hey, listen, the cornerback's out. We're going to start doing more play action. We're going to start hitting these linebackers because they can't cover. Robert Tonyan went down the middle of the seam how many times? Because nobody could cover him. Yep. These linebackers are not equipped today. Unless your name is Eric Kendricks, Bobby Wagner, Devin Bush, they cannot run with tight ends. And so all of a sudden when you lose your biggest piece that's really not your biggest piece but was about to be, everyone's like, well, what was the plan going to be? Like, some people don't see it, but I knew it was coming. I was like, dude, Irv Smith's about to go off this year because he's got everybody around him that he needs. Just run down the seam and catch that ball and get ready for a hit.
You mentioned on that KJ Osborne touchdown that somebody on defense was probably going to get ripped open. What is the most aggressively a coach has ever, quote unquote, ripped you open, and what was it for?
I can't tell you. You said I had to be very nice, so I mean, listen, no. I've been ripped open for some things now. Like, you got to remember, I'm the guy that gets really into it. I'm really passionate,
really,
and I'm like, listen, I'm selling my soul for this, and because now that I'll never get to play again, I was really beat up all the time, and I just never told anybody because I didn't want to be the guy that had to go in for surgeries, and I didn't want to be a guy that everybody thought I couldn't be the tough guy. So I had to always be the tough guy. So when they were like, hey, man, you got a torn ACL, I was like, what's the problem? Been playing with it for 7 years. Like, what are we doing? Yeah? We'll keep it moving on. They're like, whoa, dude, that ain't right.
Wait, you played on a torn ACL for 7 years?
I went to Seattle, and they were like, the doctor goes, hey, I'm about to sign with Baltimore. I'm about to. Seattle calls. I'm like, how could I pass this up? I get out there. They're like, all's good, man. Real quick, let's take a look at that knee. I'm like, do we have to? They're like, yeah, it would be great if we could. So I'm like, all right, I'm walking into the MRI. I call my agent. I go, there's no way they're going to sign us. He's like, why? I'm like, because this knee's so bad, dude. Like, I've never had any surgeries, but yet it's been completely blown out. And I'm like, I'm really hoping we're having a good day here. So we go back to the doctor's office, and the dude just walks and he sits down, and he's like, yo, just never going to tell us? I'll tell you what. He's like, you got a torn ACL, dude. You serious? He's like, this thing's been torn forever. It's like, looks terrible. I'm like, yeah, we can work through some things. He was like, bro, how are you going to show up like this and not tell us? I was like, well, I didn't know it was really torn. I just thought it hurt. Guy's like, no, you're an idiot. Dude, he's bending it. It's like shifting off the plane. He's like bending my knee and it's cracking, and he's like, dude, this doesn't even sound right. I'm like, dude, just sign the paperwork. I'm fine, okay?
How'd you
I'm
run?
like,
Boone's got a prosthetic left leg. He's like, it's fine. Everything is fine.
How'd you
I'm
run,
not going to
though?
be that. You just do it. When someone's like, you run over there, I go, you got it, babe. No problem.
Like,
I mean,
your knee collapses.
you should have seen me this year, my co-ed softball team. People laughed at me. Like the other teams, we won the championship, by the way, and I had the oldest team by like 20 years. Everybody on my team was 40 and older except for me and my wife. And I'm running, and guys are like, dude, what the hell is wrong with your knees? Oh, my God. I'm like, yeah, they're bad. They're like, dude, just don't even run to first anymore. Just hit it, and we'll run for you. I'm like,
a designated runner. Oh, man.
Hey, we all know. Man. Sometimes you got to play through some things. And you know what? It was fun for me, and that was the game within the game. But, when you talk about that and we get into all that stuff, it's crazy because – I should have signed with Baltimore because they didn't really ask a lot of questions. I think the Harbaughs are just kind of like, listen, if you're crazy enough to show up, we're cool enough to let you play. And but it was, it was fun.
Dude, the clip that went around, and we were watching this live at the end of that game the other night on Sunday Night Football, and John Harbaugh walks, 10 yards onto the field on that crucial fourth down, and it's plain as day on TV. Lamar,
yeah.
Do you want to go for it? And he knew he was going to go for it regardless. So It was a little bit of a theatrical presentation, but I love that. And the clip in the locker room afterwards, and he's giving the speech, and it's like, God, if anyone wonders, God, John Harbaugh, is he stalled out in Baltimore? No, and I would run through 5 brick walls to go play for John Harbaugh after watching that clip.
Dude, he is awesome. So I met him, and I'm outside. It's like COVID, so everything was crazy. And he came out, and he had his mask on, and I had my mask on, and we shook hands. And I could just tell by the look in his eyes that he was a Harbaugh. Like the way he looked at you, like some like competitive spirit or flash in his eye. You're like, dude,
little crazy.
He kind of wants to take me right now. And I'll never forget it. I did my workout, and they were all like, dude, you're crazy. Like, I can't believe you want to come back. I was like, dude, I'm not just here for this year. Like, I'm here for another 10. Like, I just don't belong out in that world. I belong here. And they were like, we agree. And I remember I was talking to John, and he goes, hey, by the way, I talked to my brother. He was like, he said to say hello. And I was like, oh, man.
Jim's
pressure's
crazier
on
than
now.
John, right?
But I love them, and I love the way that they are. And I think some people mistake me when I say things. Like, people don't understand how I am. When I say that sometimes a coach can be a real ass, he can. But at the same time, I love Jim. I thought he was great. And I think that at times he pushed people a little too hard, but at times he was pushing them just right. And he was trying to get the best out of everybody. And I appreciate that because he was the same guy every day. I mean, he would sit there and be like, falling asleep in meetings? I got a trick for you. Here's what we do. We pull out our leg hair real fast. He'd just start pulling out his little calf hair.
What?
And he'd be like, it keeps you up every time. And I'd be like, this guy's awesome. Like, if you can't go out and win for a guy like this that probably slept for 30 minutes last night, and here he is on the edge of his seat smelling like coffee and tobacco, like, that is what
the
you
guy,
want.
The guy wears
Might have a
cleats
guy.
on the sidelines and pulls
He's
his leg hair
awesome.
out in practice and meetings. That's amazing.
Dude,
That's football.
and you know what's the best, too, is, like, we'd be out there, and he'd be like, nah, you guys are doing it wrong. He'd be like, you got to do it like this. Ready, 80! He'd get into a stance, and, like, he'd be underneath the center. The center's like, is that Jim? What the hell is that? Awesome. Oh, it's so fun.
You would like, I think, the Vikings' new offensive line coach, Phil Rauscher. He spent the entire training camp bellowing at the top of his lungs, dropping F-bombs in front of the crowd. It was fun to. It was old school, man. It was old school. Let's blow up somebody now. And it was fun to watch because, I mean, like now, a lot of guys, P's and Q's, right? They're on their, especially training camp practices with fans there. Phil Rauscher didn't care.
Why?
Oh, it's more fun when they yell.
I know. Like, people always like, what's it like? I'm like, you really want to know? Come to a camp practice. And even then, it's so toned down because everybody knows that there's people and kids around. Like, sometimes I'll catch myself when I'll go to my kid's school and I'll be talking to the principal and I'll be ready to drop an F-bomb just because it's naturally how we do it. It's how we talk. You're walking out, you see the special teams coach, you give him the middle finger. You're like, yeah, I don't want to see you today. Leave me alone, okay? I'm not doing your stupid field goal. No, All right, I'll be over there in the 8th period. I'll see you in a little bit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you mess with people. So now I'm like, I'm up at my son's school, and I'm like, hey, what the? Yes, how are you guys? I'll catch myself.
We
all
need
the
a
time.
documentary of like Alex Boone trying to
you don't.
acclimate to civilian life.
That's what it's like.
You told me
Dude,
didn't you get ejected from a youth football game last weekend?
No.
Didn't you tell me that?
I didn't get ejected. And shout out to all my 4th grade Eagles who are just doing great in school and doing their chores. I'm super proud of them. But I'm at this game, right? And this is our 2nd year in the league. And we got to go in last year during COVID, and we played in the 4th grade league. And we schmoed some 4th graders and 3rd graders. It was awesome. So this year we go in, and the first game I'm playing, and this coach is his first game, and he's like all about the rule book. And I'm like, all right, man, calm down. It's okay. They're 9. He's like, your fullback is a foot outside the tackle, and he's not allowed to be there. And he's yelling at me, like threw his clipboard at me. And I was like, bro, you want a problem? I'll give you a problem. And all of a sudden, everybody in the stands was like, no. They were like, no, don't ever do that again. But there was other things going on. Like they were face masking my kids, and I instantly was like hot. And I was like, hey, man, touch another one of my kids' face masks. I'm going to touch you. And they were like, so they wrote to my board, and they were like, he's out of control. And I was like, nah, man, here's the dealio. I take football very serious, and I've seen a lot of people get hurt. I had a friend in college that barely took a hit. He never walked again. Like this is not a mess around game. And the way that they were pulling my kids' face masks, I was like, listen, that's the 3rd time, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. I'll just start swinging too. And they were like, no. We'll clean it up. We'll be looking this time. I'm like, you better be. And they ended up writing to my board, and they were like, listen, just sit the next game out, but we still love you. I was like, thank you.
So ejected and suspended from the 4th grade football league.
Disqualified for a game.
Once again, like you forget you're with civilians. But to my point is this game has become so soft with parents and coaches, and they're constantly like, you're too, I always get the same compliment. You have the most disciplined team, and I'm like, that's because if they're not, they'll run. They'll run like I ran. They'll run like you ran. They'll run like everybody used to have to run. That's how you teach them. And then some parents are like, well, do we have to run them so much? Did you run a lot as a kid? Well, yeah, we got in trouble. There you go. Like we all seem to be fine now. We learn accountability as young kids, and then we start to keep taking it. And that's my biggest thing with sports is like it's become so watered down that people forget what it's about. It's about life lessons. Like, listen, we're all going to be accountable to each other in this huddle, and if we're not, we're going to lose. And then you can all cry together, and then we'll all figure it out. But as we keep going, like as the kids start learning things, like, dude, we run 2-jet dancer swing. We run real NFL plays, and these kids
Football.
love it. Dude.
Wait, how do you get because I remember like I quit football pretty much after 5th grade, and our play calls in 5th grade were like left sweep left.
Because Mr. Boone
right,
scares
sweep,
you so
right.
much you don't dare screw up the play call.
No, Mr. Boone loves you. That's the thing is I treat you like you want to be treated. I treat you like you're an NFL player. Like I'll sit there and talk to you, and then I'll be like, hey, listen, we used to run this play with Kaepernick, and we'd call it razor right. Well, instantly everyone's like, I want to be like Kaepernick, right? How do I get to be like him? Or I remember watching this with Randy Moss, and he would come back like this, and man, he said, man, when the hand goes up, the ball's in the air, right? So now I got all these like 4th graders running down the field with their hand up, like, where's the ball? And I'm like, dude, throw it. You see it, dancer, hit him. Like they love it, they crave it. But the best thing is like they're all learning now that they are accountable to each other. So I saw one of my kids getting picked on during the game. I'm like, I wonder how the kids are going to handle this. 3 of my kids came out of nowhere, and they were like, hey, we want to run the ball right over that kid's face. And I'm like, why? They're like, well, he's picking on Charlie. I'm like, let's do it. So next play, these 3 kids come out of nowhere and just mollywop this kid. Like, don't ever touch my teammate again. I was like, dude, we're learning together. This is great.
Wait, my biggest remaining question here is what formations are you running that require a fullback to be outside the tackle box? What kind of innovation are you running here?
That was my biggest thing to the other coach. I go, hey, man, he's 9. Like, he's going to be a little bit outside the box at times. No one's going to complain. Like, you guys have been holding all day. I don't care. My kids will work through it. And he's like, the rules are the rules. And I'm like, dude, the rules were invented by someone's mom whose kid didn't play, okay? Calm down. It's football still. Like, they forget that and that's another thing is, like, kids forget that it's okay to get yelled at and move on. That teaches you something. You're taking criticism, right? At times, I'm going to be mad. You fumbled the ball. You should know you messed up. But if you can take that criticism at a young age, look how much better you'll be, because that is also the biggest thing with these young players and these college kids is that you try to give them criticism and they think you're attacking them. And you're like, listen.
Yeah.
I don't know where you've been your whole life, But I'm a man, and I talk to you like a man. And if you can't handle it, then we got real problems. But now I found that if you teach them young, like my kids and these kids that they play with, like they end up loving it. And they'll come to you and be like, Coach, what did I do wrong there? And you're like, listen, man, you got to take it wider. And he's like, I knew I should have. I'm like, God, this kid's so smart.
There are
Dude, you're not.
There are pro players now who don't like to be yelled at and take it personally. Like if you watch a training camp practice, you can see. And by the way, I don't think there's been more of an evolution in the training of sports than NFL training camps. From 2005 and 6, when Childress held two-a-days in 2006 for 14 consecutive days with pads on, to now when they can barely do anything. Like you watch a practice now.
Yeah, it's terrible. And not only that, but how sloppy are the games now? Yep. And that's another problem, is you see all these guys fumbling the ball. You see all these guys holding, illegal man downfield, too many men in the backfield. Like, these are all things that you find out through practice. And you want to talk about Brad Childress. Dude, I had the man, Mike Singletary, as my first head coach. We did 31 days straight, double days. We went to Oakland week 3, and they were like, thanks for making us put our pads on for the first time. I was like, wait, what? You guys haven't been in pads yet? They were like, no, we went shells all camp. They're like, we're only putting them on because you're here. I'm like, we've been doing double days every day. I'm not even sure what today is. Like, and Mike was like, don't you dare say a word to me ever. And then we were like, got it, not a word. Like, you were exhausted. I remember guys would go to the hotel and sleep in their pads just to come sleep a little bit longer so they could come right back and just get right on the field. Like, it was. And now I see it, and I'm like, you know what? This is called the watered-down version of it. And eventually it's going to end up looking so bad that they're going to have to go back and be like, we went too far, scale it back. We need to get tougher on these guys. Because there's so many teams. There's such a separation between these great teams and these mediocre teams. You're like, dude, what the hell is going on? And it's nobody plays in the preseason anymore. Nobody wants to practice. Everybody's hurt until the last day. Like, it's just this watered-down version of a good game.
Listen, if you're out there and you are a fellow fourth-grade football coach and your job is in jeopardy, let me introduce you guys to Playcon, Minnesota's industrial leader in sustainable packaging, and they're looking for great people to join their team. Playcon offers a great culture, great opportunities, a 401k match, profit sharing, and you can accrue 3 weeks of PTO in your first year. So, Purple Daily listeners and viewers of the YouTube channel, if you're looking for work, Playcon has immediate openings for machine operators, packaging operators, and tool technicians with pay starting up to $20 per hour. And they'll be conducting on-site interviews from noon until 5 on Tuesday next week at their Plymouth facility located on 9900 13th Avenue North. So for more information, that's Playcon, PLACON.com, Playcon.com. Dude, it's good to have Alex Boone back talking football, talking life.
Intimidating fourth
Does it get any better?
Fellow
We
coaches.
missed you, man. Yeah. We're going to...
You don't want this?
You don't want any of this, Coach. Go away.
What do you think, just before we say goodbye here for the day, just I would have felt better for the Vikings if the Seahawks had won the game, but they gave up a 14-point lead and lost in overtime at home to the Titans, and they're clearly going to be pissed off and looking to rectify it. But the Vikings get to play in front of 70,000 fans for the first time in 2 years, and so that's going to be an advantage. What is your general feeling going into this game, Booney?
Dude, I think that they take the game plan from the second half of that last game and you test them. You say, listen, we're going to throw as much 33 at you as you can handle. And if you think you can handle it, we're going to throw even more at you. I'm telling you, these guys are trying to be so cute with it when they should be thinking more like Kyle Shanahan. Listen, however you win the game, you win the game. Eventually the style points will come. But if you can beat on this team, because Derrick Henry just did that in the second half. And don't think that they're not going to try and stop it. But remember, their wounds are still fresh. And they're still remembering what it's going to be like to have to tackle someone. And in my opinion, like, I'm not saying that Derrick Henry isn't the best running back in the NFL. But I think Dalvin Cook lays a way better blow because he uses his whole body. Like, he's not trying to stiff arm you. He's trying to literally run through you. And to me, that's like, yeah, you just had the king, but now you're about to meet the guy that wants to pummel you. What are you going to do? Can they hang in there? And then not only that, but like defensively, you got to get after Russ. He makes the most electrifying plays, but if you just contain him, you have such a great pass rush. Two big guys in the middle, push the interior, close the outside, keep him in the pocket because if he gets loose, DK, Tyler Lockett, those guys, they work all so well together.
Hey, from an offensive line standpoint, what did you attribute to the improvement from game one, which you're right was awful, to game two? Adjustments, pride factor, because that offensive line against the Cardinals did not look like the same group, especially guys like Bradbury, who against the Bengals, Booney, looked awful and looked fine against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is going to be, Seattle's going to look at that. And last year I was with Puna Ford, and I know how he thinks, and he's going to try and get under your pads. He's going to try and lift you off the ground. He's going to try and embarrass you. So I think that when you put film out like that, you have to be very careful, because we call that opening Pandora's box. People are always going to try that against you. Now, hey, listen, he got moved by this dude. I bet you I can move him too. Like, we got to find out a couple times. But what they did, they went out and they stopped it right away. They were like, listen, we know we blocked horrendous. I mean, at points in Cincinnati, they weren't even touching people. And you're like, well, where do you expect anyone to go? But like you said, it's a pride factor. I could almost guarantee you Mike Zimmer probably threw something at every one of them, like, don't ever come out here and play like that again. And I don't blame him, because at some point you do have to have respect for yourself, the guys behind you. You can't just go out there and expect them to do everything. And I think sometimes when you get stuck in these offenses like the Titans and the Vikings, you're like, well, hey, he'll do it all. I don't really have to do anything. No, dude, you forget you have to lay the groundwork. He's going to make you look good. And going forward, you can't ever let that happen again. Don't ever fall asleep on somebody. You got to go out and do your job, especially against a team, like I said this week, that will go the whole 60 minutes. Like, they're going to play as tough. They didn't last week, and they might have to learn a lesson. But like you said, be ready for them to come in here energetic and fired up. But first game at home, I've played here before. I'm sure this place is going to be rocking.
Mm-hmm. Judd, who do you think likes football more? Is it Alex?
Football.
Or is it Brian Baldinger?
Don't even get me started on it.
Doesn't just like football, he loves football.
Watch this throw here to Cameron Brayton. Little quick jab, little bam, little punch, knock him off bounds. You got to change it up. You get the predator off bounds, and then you dance.
Football!
Football, yeah!
There's-
Football!
There's only one guy who is on that board, Phil Mackey, who you could play, who I would say exceeds Alex Boone's love for football. There's only one man.
Which one? Because I have a lot.
He is the he is.
Was he on Monday Night Football last night?
He was exactly last night, and it's not Matt LaFleur.
You think you and your
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant this one.
No. Are you talking about Dan Campbell?
Dan Campbell likes football.
Dude,
He loves football.
before we go,
he would throttle fourth graders.
Brett Favre.
Before we go, we got to talk about Dan Campbell coming to the North, because how much do you love this guy? Like, his team
He's
last
ridiculous,
night.
dude.
Bro, I love this guy. They showed up and they punched Aaron so hard in the mouth. But now listen, 2 fumbles, that'll cost you. An interception, that'll cost you. Those losing a cornerback and then Anzalone not being able to keep up with anybody will hurt you. But, dude, I'm telling you, this Lions team is on the right path with this guy. Like, they needed somebody that was going to be gritty and crazy and wild. And it seems like the team's kind of taken over that mindset. Dude, I love this. Now, the Bears, in my opinion, still suck because Matt Nagy just doesn't know what he's doing. But
Matt Nagy,
everybody
he
else,
got into an argument with some reporter about like whether Andy Dalton's going to play and if he's giving away scheme. It's
he
like,
said
dude,
that's scheme.
come on.
The reporter said, no, that's not
It's not
scheme, Matt.
He's like, no, it is scheme. Like, oh God, you're fired.
But
you fire him, please.
yeah, but Dan Campbell loves football more than anybody at
Dan Campbell
I would
doesn't
fight
just
Dan
like
Campbell to
football,
prove that I like it
Dan
more.
Campbell loves
I would
Dan-
fight him.
Dan Campbell would respect that and hire you for his coaching staff immediately if you fought.
Yeah, he would.
Listen,
He'd love you.
I'm in on Dan Campbell if he's the head coach of a team that I'm not rooting for, and if he's the offensive line coach for a team. Like, I don't know. Head coach, I guess we'll see.
Yes,
I guess
that's
we'll
what
see.
they need, man. Change the game. Dude, you know who else? Joe
We're gonna
Judge.
kick
Him
you
and
in the
Joe
teeth.
Judge remind me
All
the
right,
same.
and when you
Yes.
Joe Judge, you're in on Joe Judge or out on Joe Judge?
I love him. Kelvin Benjamin was like, he's so mean. I was like, I love him already. Sign him up.
You
We
just
need more
want-
coaches like you.
You want head coaches that will just eat raw meat. They
Dude,
don't
come
even
talk
need
to me. Yes, come sit with me. Drink some chocolate
You're
milk,
going to have
and we
the
can talk
toughest
stories.
fourth graders ever, man. Your fourth grade kids are going to be just
Hey,
biting off kneecaps.
They're gonna
and
be
playing
all
for
state
Dan Campbell
linebackers.
one day. Yep.
dude. Hey, you'll love it. I'm gonna send you video. Just wait.
Welcome back, Alex Boone.
Love having you.
Fun to have you back here.
So great to be back, guys. Thank you so much. Can't
Every
wait.
Tuesday, we're going to dive into the trenches. We're going to talk life and fourth grade football and the Vikings and tell some stories. So thanks for hanging out with us. This is the Marconi finalist Purple Daily Vikings Entertainment. Listen, we just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. Is that much to ask for? We'll see you guys tomorrow. Actually, tonight, Purple After Dark, and then tomorrow again.